The blood on her dress wasn't hers. Jack Thornton saw it first, dark stains against the pale yellow fabric as she stumbled into his camp, her bare feet bleeding on the rocky ground. She collapsed beside his dying fire, clutching something wrapped in torn cloth, her breathing shallow and desperate. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the desert wind. "Just one chance." Jack's hand moved instinctively to his coat, but something in her eyes stopped him. Not the wild look of madness he'd seen in desperate folks before. This was different. This was grief so raw it cut through the moonlight like a blade. She couldn't be more than 20, with auburn hair matted against her skull and a face that might have been beautiful before whatever hell she'd escaped from. Her dress, once fine, hung in tatters, a preacher's daughter maybe, or a banker's wife. But that blood told a different story. "Ma'am," Jack said carefully, his voice gravelly from too many years of dust and solitude. "You're hurt." She shook her head violently, clutching the bundle tighter. "Not mine. Never mine." Her eyes fixed on his with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "They killed him. Shot him down like a dog in the street." Jack had been riding alone for 3 years ever since Sarah died. 3 years of avoiding towns, avoiding people, avoiding anything that might remind him what it felt like to care about someone. He'd made camp in this god-forsaken stretch of Nevada desert precisely because no one ever came here, no one except her. Who killed who? He asked, though part of him didn't want to know. Trouble had a way of finding him even in the emptiest places. She unwrapped the bundle with trembling fingers. Inside was a baby, no more than 6 months old, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos around him. The child's tiny fist curled around a piece of torn fabric, the same yellow as her dress. "My husband," she whispered. "They said he stole money from the bank, said he was running with the Grayson gang." Tears carved clean tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "But he wasn't. He was trying to protect us." Jack felt the familiar weight settling in his chest, the weight of someone else's problems becoming his own. He'd sworn he'd never carry that burden again. But when she looked up at him, holding that sleeping child, something cracked inside the walls he'd built. "They're coming for me," she said. "For us." In the distance, barely audible, came the sound that made Jack's blood run cold. Hoofbeats. Multiple riders, moving fast across the hardpan. Jack's mind raced as the hoofbeats grew louder. 6 riders, maybe 7, judging by the rhythm. Professional, organized. Not the kind of men who gave up easy. "What's your name?" he asked, already knowing he was about to make a choice that would change everything. "Emma. Emma Cartwright." She struggled to her feet, swaying. "My husband was Thomas Cartwright, the bank clerk in Silver Falls." Jack knew that name, had heard it whispered in saloons from here to Colorado. Thomas Cartwright, the man who'd supposedly helped the Grayson gang rob 3 banks before disappearing with $50,000. If the stories were true, Emma was sitting on enough money to buy half of Nevada. If they were lies, she was just a widow running from men who'd already murdered her husband. "Please," she whispered, again that same desperate word that had stopped his heart the first time. "Just one chance, for him." She looked down at the baby, who'd begun to stir. "His name is Samuel. He's all I have left." The riders were close now. Jack could hear their voices carrying on the wind, rough and impatient. Bounty hunters, most likely. The kind of men who didn't care much about guilt or innocence, only about the reward money. Jack had 2 choices: send her away and let the desert decide her fate, or stand between her and whatever was coming. 3 years ago he would have chosen differently. 3 years ago he still believed in right and wrong, in protecting the innocent, before Sarah died in his arms, because he'd been too late coming home, before he learned that caring about someone just gave the world another way to break you. But looking at Emma clutching that baby, something stirred in the ashes of the man he used to be. "Can you ride?" he asked. Hope flickered in her eyes. "Yes." "Then get on my horse, now." She didn't question him, didn't waste time with gratitude. She just wrapped Samuel tighter and stumbled toward his mare Eclipse, who stood patient and ready. Jack kicked dirt over his fire, and grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against his saddle. The hoofbeats were almost on top of them now, maybe a quarter-mile out. "Jack," Emma said as she settled into the saddle, the baby quiet against her chest. "Why are you helping me?" He looked up at her, this broken woman with her dead husband's blood on her dress and her sleeping child in her arms. For a moment he saw Sarah's face instead, Sarah, who died believing he would always come home to her. "Because," he said, swinging up behind her, "everyone deserves just one chance." As Eclipse bolted into the darkness, Jack heard the shouts behind them. The hunt had begun. They'd been riding hard for an hour when Eclipse began to falter. The mare was strong, but carrying 2 adults and a child across broken desert terrain was taking its toll. "There," Emma pointed toward a cluster of rocks ahead. "We can hide there." Jack shook his head. "They'll find us. These men, they're professionals. They'll track us right to those rocks." Behind them the pursuit had spread out. Jack could see the dust clouds in the moonlight, at least 5 separate trails now, the riders trying to surround them, smart, experienced. "Who are they?" he asked as they crested a small ridge. "Men who worked for Harrison Grayson," Emma said, her voice tight with fear. "They think Thomas buried the money somewhere. Think I know where. Do you?" She was quiet for so long that Jack thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible above the wind, "Yes." The truth hit Jack like a physical blow. She did know. She'd been carrying more than just grief and fear. She'd been carrying a secret that men would kill for. "How much?" he asked. 50,000, maybe more. Emma shifted Samuel to her other arm. "Thomas didn't steal it, Jack. He was trying to return it. The bank president, Morrison, he was the one working with Grayson. Thomas found out, tried to make it right." A rifle shot cracked across the desert, the bullet singing past Jack's ear. The riders had found their range. "Hold on," Jack growled, spurring Eclipse toward a narrow canyon he could barely make out in the darkness. It was a risk. Canyons could be traps as easily as shelters, but they were out of options. They plunged into the rocky corridor just as more shots echoed behind them. The canyon walls rose on both sides, blocking out the stars, turning the world into a tunnel of shadows and echoing hoofbeats. "Jack," Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "There's something else." He didn't want to hear it. Whatever else she was carrying, it would only make things worse. "Thomas left something for you," she continued. "For whoever helped me," he said. "There would be someone who'd do the right thing when it mattered." Jack's blood turned to ice. "He left something for me." "How could he know?" "Because he knew you'd come," Emma said simply. "He said, there are still good men in this world, men who remember what honor means." The canyon narrowed ahead, forcing them to slow. Behind them the shouts of their pursuers grew louder, more confident. They'd found the canyon entrance. Jack pulled Eclipse to a stop beside a cluster of boulders and helped Emma down. The baby was crying now, thin wails that seemed to echo off the rock walls. "Whatever happens," Jack said, checking his rifle, "stay behind those rocks. Don't come out, no matter what you hear." Emma grabbed his arm. "Don't do this. There are too many of them." Jack looked down at her hand on his sleeve. Such a small hand. Sarah's had been small too. "Ma'am," he said gently, "sometimes one chance is all a man gets to do the right thing." The first rider appeared at the canyon mouth, silhouetted against the stars. "Cartwright woman." The voice boomed off the canyon walls. "We know you're in there." Jack counted 5 men spread across the canyon entrance, their rifles gleaming in the moonlight. Professional killers, just as he'd thought. The kind of men who enjoyed their work. "Send out the woman and the kid," the leader called out. "We just want to talk." Behind the boulder, Emma held Samuel close, rocking him gently to quiet his cries. The baby's small fingers wrapped around a strand of her hair, and for a moment, Jack saw something that stopped his breath. Trust. Complete, absolute trust. The way Sarah used to look at him. "They won't just talk," Emma whispered. Jack nodded. He'd known men like these before. They'd take what they wanted, and leave bodies behind to keep the secret safe. "Emma," he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the canyon entrance, "that thing Thomas left, what was it?" She reached into her bodice and pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was a silver locket, tarnished with age. She opened it with trembling fingers, revealing a photograph. Jack's world tilted. The photograph showed a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, a woman he'd loved more than life itself, a woman who died 3 years ago, in a town called Silver Falls. "Sarah," he whispered. Emma nodded. "Thomas was the doctor who tried to save her. He said you were her husband, said you'd left town after she died, but that you were still out there somewhere, still the kind of man who'd help someone in need." The locket felt impossibly heavy in Jack's palm. Sarah's face smiled up at him from the faded photograph, the same face that haunted his dreams. "He said she talked about you," Emma continued, "even at the end, said you were coming home to her, that you'd always come home." Jack's throat tightened. He had come home, 2 days too late. "She made Thomas promise something before she died," Emma said. "Made him promise that if he ever met someone who needed help, really needed it, he'd find a way to get word to you. She said you'd understand, said you'd know what honor meant." A tear rolled down Jack's cheek. Even in death, Sarah had known him better than he knew himself. "Thomas never forgot that promise," Emma whispered. "When Morrison betrayed him, when he knew they'd come for us, he remembered. He left that locket with instructions. Find Jack Thornton, tell him Sarah kept her faith in him." The canyon fell silent except for the soft sounds of Samuel's breathing. Even the pursuers seemed to be waiting. Jack looked at Emma, really looked at her, the strength in her shoulders despite her fear, the fierce protectiveness in her eyes. When she looked at her son, the way she'd asked for just one chance, not demanding, not begging, but asking with the quiet dignity of someone who'd already lost everything that mattered. She was nothing like Sarah, and everything like her. "Time's up," the leader shouted. "We're coming in." Jack closed the locket and handed it back to Emma. "Keep it safe," he said, "for Samuel, so he'll know his father was a good man." Then he stepped out from behind the boulder, his rifle ready. The first shot came from Jack's Winchester, taking down the leader before the man could blink. The canyon erupted in gunfire, muzzle flashes lighting the rock walls like lightning. Jack rolled behind a boulder as bullets chipped stone around him. 4 men left spread across the canyon mouth, using their horses for cover, professional killers, but they'd made one mistake. They'd trapped themselves in a bottleneck. Jack worked his way along the canyon wall, using the shadows and rock formations for cover. One by one he picked them off with the methodical precision of a man who'd learned to shoot in the war, and perfected the skill in 3 years of solitude. The last man tried to run. Jack's bullet found him at the canyon entrance. When the echoes died away, silence settled over the canyon like a blanket. Jack walked among the bodies, checking each one, his rifle ready. All dead, no wounded to worry about. Behind the boulder, Emma emerged with Samuel, who'd somehow slept through the entire gunfight. "Is it over?" she asked. Jack nodded, suddenly feeling every one of his 35 years. "It's over." They buried the bodies in the desert at dawn, Emma insisting they deserved that much dignity, despite what they'd done. Jack didn't argue. Sarah would have said the same thing. "What now?" Emma asked as they stood beside Eclipse in the morning sun. Jack looked at her. This woman who'd stumbled into his camp and changed everything. She was still beautiful, even after everything she'd been through, still strong, still fighting for her son's future. "Now," he said, "we ride to Silver Falls, clear your husband's name, make sure the real thief faces justice." Emma smiled for the first time since he'd met her, and then Jack felt something stir in his chest, something he'd thought was dead and buried with Sarah. Hope, the terrifying, wonderful possibility of a future that meant something again. Then he said, "We see what happens. If you'll have me, if you think Samuel might need a father who knows about honor." Emma took his hand, her fingers warm and alive and real. "Please," she whispered. But this time it wasn't desperation, this time it was invitation. Just one chance. Jack squeezed her hand and lifted her into the saddle, Samuel secure in her arms. As they rode toward Silver Falls and whatever future waited there,
He could swear he felt Sarah's blessing in the morning wind. 20 years later, when Samuel Thornton graduated from law school, he would find the silver locket in his mother's jewelry box. Inside, alongside the faded photograph, was a newer picture, his parents on their wedding day, standing outside the Silver Falls Church with matching gold bands and eyes full of hope. On the back, in his father's careful handwriting, "Everyone deserves just one chance. Sometimes it changes everything forever." The locket would pass to Samuel's children, and their children after that, carrying with it the story of a night in the desert, when a cowboy's broken heart learned to beat again, and a widow's desperate whisper became the first word of a new beginning. In the end, that's all anyone really needs. Just one chance to do the right thing. Just one moment when courage matters more than fear. Just one hand extended in the darkness, ready to pull someone else toward the light. Jack Thornton learned that lesson twice in his life, once when he failed to save the woman he loved, and again when he chose to save the woman who would love him back. Both lessons came with a price, both changed everything forever.